Well, welcome to the Gateway Mission podcast. If this is your first time listening, man, we're glad you're here. And if you've returned, thanks a lot for doing that. My name is Steve Rusticus. I am the Chief Operations Officer here at Gateway Mission. And honestly, the podcast has two simple goals. One, we want to give you information. We want to share what we do, how we do it, and more importantly, why we do the ministry we do at Gateway Mission. And then we want to give you some inspirational stories, talk about how God is working in and through Gateway Mission to change people's lives from the inside out. We're in a series right now called Hope for the Homeless. And during that series, I'm joined by Scott Klingberg. Scott is the campus director at our Gateway Women and Children's Center. And we've been talking a little bit about what's going on in the homeless culture, what that looks like, how we address those things. And so a couple of episodes, we've talked about sort of a homelessness 101, just giving some background about the nature of homelessness, how it's changed, all those kinds of things. And then last time we were together, we talked a little bit about visible and invisible poverty, that the visible poverty we see are lack of resources, especially lack of homes. But the invisible is really the significant piece. Can you talk just a little bit about that and catch people up, Scott?
Sure. Yeah, you're right, Steve. That invisible or visible poverty, rather, is those basic needs: that shelter, food, clothing, the kind of things that we think when we see people that need help. But there's also the whole concept of invisible poverty that we've talked about, which is a poverty of relationships, a poverty of truth, a poverty of identity, and a poverty of hope. And they all relate together. And as we talked last time about how the answer to those is truly found in the gospel.
Right. So what we say is if we deal only with those visible issues of poverty, we're really incompletely ministering to people. We really want to get inside and say, how do we deal with those four other areas? Today, we're going to get a little bit more specific yet. You can kind of see a procession along the way here. We're going to talk about what real hope and help for the homeless looks like. So how do we help? What does that look like? What's our philosophy, our ideology? And then we're going to spend a little bit of time with Jenna, and she's going to tell us a little bit about what it looks like on the front lines. But let's talk about this three-legged stool we talk about, which is grace and mercy and compassion.
Sure. Yeah, that's 3 points that we really try to emphasize with all the people that come in to see us. It starts with compassion when they come to the door, whether any one of our campuses. We really, truly are compassionate towards these people. We thought about that over the last year. I looked it up. We've had 848 people come through our doors in the last year. And of that, 108 of them were children. And then with our women, we've had about 38% this last winter that came in from living outside. We wish they wouldn't live outside at all, but we were able to give them that help. But that compassionate care when they walk through the door. And then grace. Grace is undeserved favor. We don't charge anything for our services. We do it freely because we love people and care about people. And we truly want to do that as they come through our doors. And then lastly, mercy. We can look at people's past mistakes and really be judgmental about them, but that's not what we want to do. We want to give them a fresh start, give them that hope and that they can have for the future. So those are kind of our foundation of grace, mercy, and compassion as they come through our doors.
Yeah, and the way in which we walk with people and the way in which we see people really is a reflection of our deeply held beliefs that each person is created uniquely in the image of God. And we want to show them hospitality. We want to care for them, that they're more than simply mouths to feed. Right?
Right. Yeah. They're not a project for us. I mean, this is us coming alongside them, not that it's something we do to them. And it's their inherent dignity that they have and value. Again, as you said, is the image of God. So many of them come in what I call an identity crisis. They're, who am I? I think we all wonder that. But in particular, many of our friends that come to us struggle with believing a diagnosis or believing what they've been told, that you're a failure all your life. And we really try to give them that hope that they can find, again, only truly in the gospel.
Yeah, so many of our guests come in with a perspective of, I'm defined by how I've blown it, or how I've missed it. I'm an addict. I'm a bad mother. I'm a bad father. I'm all of those kinds of things. So we want to speak to that. One of the things we talked about in an earlier episode was we talked a little bit about the general characteristics of the homeless, but each person is an individual, right? I mean, there's some things that are true about a lot of our guests, but each person is different. So how do we address those things? How do we look at, hey, how are we going to work with this individual or this family as they come to us?
Yeah, and that's one of the mistakes we all tend to make in compassion when we look at people. We try to employ the same compassionate help across the board, and that doesn't work necessarily always, because everybody's story is different. Everybody has different abilities and hurts and pains, troubles, trauma from the past, and everything has to be different. And sometimes it's a lot harder because you can't just say everybody does this or everybody doesn't do that. But it's really tailoring things on an individual basis to help them for where they're at and their needs that they have and the problems that they have to overcome.
Yeah, as we continue on in this series, we're going to talk more about that. Jenna will help us understand that maybe a little bit more from a front line. But one of the examples we have of that is in one of our programs, our Pathway program, which is about a 4-month program for folks. We have something called Pathway Bridge. Could you just talk about that as an example of
that's a great example.
How we look at people as individuals.
That's a great example of what we do. Pathway Bridge, we started it. We recognized that we had a lot of people with this mental health disability or physical disability. They can't always go to work full time. They have challenges with those disabilities. So we created a pathway, what we call Pathway Bridge, which we work with them different. Again, that's where you can't employ the same help to everybody. Our goal is to get people to work. But with the Pathway Bridge people, that's not always possible to work full time. So we work with them, connect them with Michigan Rehabilitative Services, the Disability Network, others that can provide them resources, but also tailoring those things to them. If they cannot work full-time, then we try to get them part-time work. If they can't work part-time at all, then we have them participate in what we call service projects around to give them that value. Everybody, we get value from what we can do, and everybody has inherent value and abilities and skills, and we try to draw them out and to give them opportunities to do that.
Yeah. Thanks, Scott. Hey, we one of the things we talk about is there's different kinds of helps for different kinds of situations, and there's really sort of certain steps to helping people. Steve Corbett and Brian Fickert have written a book, When Helping Hurts, where they talk about those 3 things. Can you kind of unpack that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, they've done a great job, and if you haven't read the book, we encourage you to do that. Talk about this concept of 3 concepts of relief, rehabilitation, and development. Relief is really those that what we think of helping that visible poverty, those emergency needs. I don't have food. I don't have clothing. I don't have a place to sleep tonight. That's emergency relief. That's things that need to be fixed right now. And then there's rehabilitation. That's where we do fall into that a lot in what we do. That's the employment coaching and accountability and training and those kind of things to move people forward, to really trying to get them back to where they can be. And then the development is the last kind of step. And that's establishing long-term relationships and really living in with people and creating community and development. But I think we get hung up, a lot of us, on the first one, that relief. And that's back to that visible poverty again, because that's the easiest to solve. And it seems like that's the thing that they really need. When we talk about that, it's like when we apply, if I've got severe pain, I go to the ER. I don't just want a pain medicine. I want to know what's wrong. I mean, it's a symptom rather than a problem. And when we keep addressing that relief and not addressing the problem, that's where we run into issues there.
And so we try to develop, and we have developed differing sort of programs or pieces that people can step into there. And there is a progression oftentimes for folks because most of the men and women and the children who come in, relief is what's visible and necessary right now, but rehabilitation and development are really the things that they need. What happens if we just keep providing relief for people?
Well, then we end up in a sense of dependency. You realize that's the only way you can get things and just stuck there. And it's really a place of not a lot of dignity, just being dependent on others just to give you things and handouts. And it's really a discouraging place to be.
Yeah. And I think we're going to talk about that in our next episode when we talk about the kind of compassion we want to share and how sometimes it's misguided. It's time to kind of wrap this part up. But, we talk about the invisible poverties of identity and relationship and truth and hope. And I want to sort of land on that hope piece as we try to help people, because so many, the men and women that you and your team see in the residents and we see in our program are hopeless. Let's talk about hope. What's real hope look like?
Yeah, hope. I just reminded this just the other day. I was riding in my car and I pulled up next to somebody who was scratching off their lottery ticket, and they had great disappointment when they didn't win that lottery ticket. Their hope was kind of dashed there, and it reminded me of many of the people that we talked to. That hope is dashed. Whether that hope has been in the next apartment or that relationship or that job. There's always something out there that they want to fill that with. But we know that true hope comes in Jesus Christ, and the hope there, that's for eternity, that it goes beyond any of these material things that we live with here. And that's what we try to truly express to our guests.
Yeah, we were having a conversation, about this, and there's a difference. I think in the world that we live in, we tend to define hope as wishful thinking. Mm-hmm. We hope this will happen. We hope that'll happen. When we talk about real biblical hope, it's grounded in the promises and the truths of God's word. Hope is about who God says you are, not what the world says you are. It's grounded in what you're capable of, not what you're incapable of. It's grounded in the promise of the gospel and the cross and the resurrection. And that's really what we want to point people towards, right? Because as the Bible says, that kind of hope doesn't disappoint us, right? And that's where we want to go with it. Well, hey, thanks for listening. We really appreciate the fact that you've taken some time to do this. If you want more info, you can find it at hopefoundhere.org/podcast. It'll give you some of the resources. If you have questions, we're always open to those, and we hope that you'll listen again. So until next time, thanks for listening.